My name is Shawna Thayer, and just to introduce myself, I apologize that the materials are slightly dated. My previous role, I led the Consumer Insights and Strategy Division at Supervalu, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is kind of leveraging some of that information. But I'm currently, don't even have my business cards yet. I'm currently working for Analytic Partners, which is a marketing analytics firm. But what I want to really talk about today is really thinking about how we can activate on all of this amazing information that we are now really getting access to. I have spent most of my career more on the analytics side of consumer insights, and have kind of dipped my toe into the research side. And one thing that I've seen, and I've seen this when I've been both in client-side organizations and also on supplier-side organizations, and I know we've got a big mix here in the audience, I've really seen that there is one challenge that we all kind of share. And it was even touched upon in a few of our earlier discussions. And so one of the challenges that I think we have is in this multi-channel research environment, where we're talking so much about this great mobile new tools that we have to use, how do you link all of this information together? This mobile world is really increasing the amount of information that's available to key decision makers. And, the challenge I think that we have is that I often find that business decision makers, business leaders, that rather than being empowered by these new ways of gathering data, new ways of doing research, new ways of data mining, oftentimes it actually feels kind of crippling and paralyzing because it's just yet another thing to consider. I think the organizations really struggle to activate on that information, and it's only going to increase as we all start leveraging some of these new mobile platforms and things that we're talking about at this conference today. I mean, already I find my head is just buzzing with new ideas of, we could try that, we could try that. But at some point, if this work doesn't get activated on, if we don't get our business leaders on board and understanding what it is that we're doing, that work just kind of gets lost. So, how do we start to bridge that gap between research and analytics? I've seen a lot of organizations, and again, both on kind of the client and the supplier side, that inadvertently kind of make the integration of research and analytics really difficult, thus the two fishbowls. I think that there's a lot of that kind of generates from background, education, training. There's the folks who went down the statistics path, and there's the folks that went down the market research path. And oftentimes, entire insights organizations kind of organize themselves in those funnels. And when that happens, each function develops its own budgets, its own priorities, its own goals, and when that happens that way, it's really difficult to integrate the information together. And I think there's even a bit of a cultural thing that can happen in organizations where maybe the analytics folks kind of think of research as that soft, squishy stuff. And maybe the market researchers look at some of the data miners and analysts and say, they're the ones who just do the numbers and spreadsheets. So there's kind of this almost a core culture that seems to kind of divide these two types of teams. So what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to first highlight a case study where I really feel like the insights were lost because of that divide between research and analytics. And then later on, talk about some things that I've seen work that really help to drive change there, and then highlight some good case studies, because it is possible. So a few years ago, when I was at Mattel, we commissioned this just amazing customer segmentation study. We leveraged a very well-respected agency, spent a good deal of budget. It was just a really great work. The research team was the one who really commissioned a lot of this effort. And the insights that came back, they were phenomenal. I mean, we learned about what moms and girls were looking for their dolls, the channels in which they preferred to shop, how they liked to be communicated to, what they were looking for the future. I mean, it was just rich, beautiful, wonderful customer segmentation. And we were going to just launch this right into our product development pipeline and just leverage this like crazy. Well, it was amazing until it was time to activate on the information. So, as I had said, this work was done kind of very much in a research silo. And at this time, it was a very, very traditional, no mobile at the time, kind of research study. And then it came back to the team that I was with on the analytics side. And it was, okay, we want to leverage this for our CRM strategy. We want to take this and activate it so that we can do custom catalogs, custom emails, custom everything, personalized to our consumer. And wouldn't that be great? And everyone said, yes, that would be great. Except we had no way to link the research to our database. So there was an immediate break. We had this just wealth of amazing research, amazing qualitative, just deep, wonderful insights. But when it came time to actually activate it and to actually really kind of put the wheels on the cart and get going, we were stuck and we were stumped. So quick question on that. Just show of hands, old school. Does this sound familiar? Have people been in this type of a situation? Okay. I've seen it, and I'm glad to see I'm not the only one. It's prevalent in both client organizations and supplier organizations. And the fact of the matter is, integration after the fact, it is really, really difficult, right? You end up getting into these complex conversations of, well, this team used this population, and this team used that population, so we can't possibly integrate it together. Right? Not realistic, but it's true. It's what we do. Different time frames, different definitions, methodological concerns. All of those things after the fact are really, really hard to fix. So what do we do to try to integrate the research with analytics so we don't, if you will, miss the train? All right, plan ahead, and more so than this lovely cross-stitcher here. I know it's cliche to say you've got to lay the foundation and plan ahead, and we're all so busy. But really, when you're thinking about the big research projects or the big analytic projects, big business questions that are coming to your door, you've got to think carefully about how you can lay out a foundation to integrate the research and the analytics into a cohesive story. One of our presenters talked about kind of the what and the why. I couldn't agree more. Being able to do that is key. So what are some things to do? One approach, and this was something that we did at Supervalu, which was phenomenal change, is we designed an organizational structure that aligned research goals. So rather than having kind of research functions reporting up one way and analytics functions reporting up another, we brought the teams together to talk about insights in general. Now, a lot of times you look at kind of org structure stuff and you say, well, but can that really make that big of a difference? Well, it does, and it serves a few purposes. It gives you leadership support. It provides an obvious venue for budget prioritization, for also making sure that you're not duplicating efforts. Those are the types of things that come out of just simply thinking about the business or thinking about the research and analytics as kind of one big piece. Can't get away from the money discussion. Budget for both research and analytics. Again, we're all on very, very tight resources, very, very tight budgets. We're not talking here about spending more on research and analytics, although I bet many of us in this room would love to. Really, it's about making sure that when you are setting up those big, risky, big business opportunity kind of research questions and studies, ensuring that you have both sides of that equation represented. Goals, priorities, expected outcomes aligned up front. One that we talk about a lot. Not always easy to practice. In the case that I mentioned earlier, if only we would have gotten the teams together to talk about how ultimately they wanted to use this rich segmentation work in order to activate their CRM strategy, a whole host of problems would have been avoided. And this would have been an easy solution to employ. And this is an important one. When we talk about integrating both research and analytics, it's important to also solicit your partnerships outside of your insights functions, whether it's IT, legal, finance, early. From an IT perspective, you may need help getting your different data streams into one database or figure out ways to get things to tie together. You might need legal help working through things like third-party agreements if you're working with multiple vendors, things like that. You might need some help kind of coordinating those efforts. You might need help from finance. Maybe your accounting has been very, very separate before, and those budgets have been held very separate before. This is the time to get them involved. So when you think about that and you're planning a big integrated study, don't forget all of the channels at your disposal. You know, given what we're learning here, obviously, mobile information is going to be an important one to consider. And we still have traditional surveys, you know, customer satisfaction kind of traditions. We've got the data mining and the spreadsheets for the geeks like myself. And then secondary work. And one thing that I really encourage you to take back to your organizations is also to spend time building that cross-functional expertise amongst your teams. I think it's really easy, especially with junior analysts and researchers coming into the field, to get really siloed into the work that they're doing. And now every one of them wants to be in digital, right? Great opportunity, though, to ensure that try to get your teams to at least have expertise in 2 of these channels, if not all 4. Because once you have that breadth of experience, you're going to find that the insights driven from your work just explodes. So, given all of these platitudes, really, can this work? Can you really make this happen? You absolutely can. And so I've got 2 case studies that I want to talk about where that integration of research and analytics drove just phenomenal insights that could actually be actioned upon by the business. The first here is more about an internal integration. We were working on brand development study. What's going to be the future of our brands? What's the current equity that we have by market? What's going to be the strategic roadmap for building our brand? And where do you go to immediately? You say, well, that's clearly a research study, right? That's clearly something that we're going to find out consumer perceptions. We're going to look at attitudes. We're going to look at net promoter scores. Clearly a research type of work. But what we were considering doing as an organization was actually going to be pretty costly. I mean, if we were going to make a big swing, which was a possibility, a big swing in our brand development, there was going to be some real financials tied to that. So what we were able to do, again, once we were under one house together, this became so much easier to accomplish. We were able to do the research as we intended, but also tied to analytics to understand the financial opportunity and risk. We were able to leverage secondary data resources to look at kind of how changes in our brand might impact us and our competitors in the market. We were able to look to see kind of how this would impact maybe our most loyal customers and whether or not they would be open to such kind of brand changes. And what was great about it then is that it became time for us to talk about the strategic activation. Our business partner, I mean, how can you say no to the recommendations at that point? At that point, you've laid out, here we go, here's what we think will happen if you make this decision, here's why we think these decisions are correct, and it's all laid out. I mean, it's impossible to say no when the facts are that clearly laid out. And if you can cover both sides of that bridge, both the research and the analytics, it just encourages much more adoption. But it's not just about getting your teams in-house aligned. There's also some great opportunities to get your suppliers and vendors working together. And this can be tricky because now we start getting into kind of how we get different folks talking together and sharing information. But the benefits are a win-win for everybody involved. I've got an example here from Analytic Partners. They were working with a client on marketing optimization, marketing mix work. So clearly an analytic-focused kind of a study, these big advanced regressions, time series regressions that are going to tell you how much dollars you're getting back from your TV, radio, and everything else. What they were able to do, though, is they were working with a client that was doing a ton of really great copy testing. So, looking at all the different types of recall, attitudes, perceptions, all of that stuff of their copy. And what they were able to find is tying these two together, they were actually able to drive analytics that would predict not only the recall and perception of the various media copies, but they're actually even to tie that to the financials of how many dollars this would relate to for their business. Again, talk about a strategic activation. Now they know that they can which ads to pick to run that are not only going to have a greater likelihood of driving a positive consumer perception, but also actual buying behavior. Again, by having both sides of that equation tied together, I mean, you just can't say no to that kind of insight, and it just turns all of our work into something that's really actionable and tangible. Now, it's not always easy. I'm going to spend the last couple minutes here just talking about some of the challenges that you might face. There's huge benefits to going this approach, but you got to work through a few things. One thing we hear a lot, the work is already in the field. Too late. We're already collecting that data. The study has already been approved. We've already got it out there. My advice to you on that is then just start now. Just start right now. If you've missed the opportunity to plan up front, fine, it happens. Make the best of what you have. And if nothing else, ensure that your research and analytics teams are jointly presenting together. Because if nothing else, that starts to get your organization, from an adoption standpoint, starting to think about how to tie these two, sometimes very disparate sources of information together. Our budget, it's so tight. What you're suggesting, Shawna, it's going to kill us. No. I can honestly say, and I experienced this myself, that when you start to tie your research and analytics and it becomes more of an integrated function in your organization, what you're actually going to find is that you start eliminating duplicative efforts. You eliminate rework. Work gets done on a more efficient basis because you're working together at the onset, and that drives so much for cost savings. At the very least, you'll break even. I can't keep track. All these moving pieces, this study was already complex, and now we got to add in all these other people. Well, you need a strong project manager. I can't emphasize that enough. You need somebody who has the authority and the know-how to keep these pieces moving quickly. And if you can find somebody who has some experience on either the research or the analytics component as well, you're even better off because they'll be able to help speak the language and move things along. I need this fast. I do not have time for all of this integration. Well, I'll be honest with you. The first couple times, it is going to take longer, right? There's just no getting over the learning curve. It takes a while for people to learn kind of how to work together and how to get all of these data streams together. But after that, you get through those first few hurdles, it really does become more efficient. What we saw at Supervalu is that our timelines were shrinking. Because now the teams are working together more. They're having the callway conversations. It became part of the norm. And when we were avoiding the rework, avoiding the duplication, we actually saw that the work got done much faster. And the really tough one, the results don't align. What's the right conclusion? My amazing new mobile research study is telling me to do A. This other kind of, intense data mining project is telling me to do B. Now what? Now what do we do? Well, it happens, right? Oftentimes, we are faced with a situation where there's no smoking gun, and different methodologies might point us in different directions. Here's where I think it's just crucial that your relationships with your business partners are so important. Understanding what is the long-term strategic goal that you're trying to reach, understanding what the current point of view is, understanding what it is that can be activated on easily and quickly versus what would be just a mountain to overcome. This is when you have to work with your partners and be transparent, and talk with them about what you're seeing and work together to determine what the best next step is. And that is my time. So please find me if you want to continue the discussion. It's something I'm really, really passionate about.